All right, we're looking in the middle of chapter 10, looking at considering the heavens. And one more, sorry. And as we start to look at these two, this particular chapter, I hope you would notice that we were talking about the seasonal constellations. Your book says on page 314, as the sun makes its yearly trek around the celestial sphere, its light blocks the view of some constellations and reveals others. So there are certain constellations you can't see during the day. There's certain constellations you can only see at night, and so that's one thing that you want to note. As we consider the sky and we look at pieces of it, we ought to be mindful of all the cool things that could be seen up there. First of all, in the sake of review, I want to review just a little bit of the celestial sphere. So what I'm going to do is simply just clicking into the PowerPoint, and I'm going to try to write all over this thing. First of all, I am using a home PC to write on this, so I'm going to need to practice my coordination with some of this. But first of all, in the sky we essentially have one giant sphere, and so the Earth at its center. We call this thing the celestial sphere. Okay, and that celestial sphere, it says on page 312, is an imaginary giant one that has the Earth at its center. At any location on Earth, only half of it is visible, and so if you look at kind of your side perspective, and here's kind of the ground itself, and you're standing on it, you have this thing that divides the visible star from the invisible star, and we call this ground over here the horizon. And so you can't see below that, but anything that's up here you can see. And so you do exist, of course, on the planet. Of course, the Earth has poles, and if you extend those poles, you will get celestial poles. Okay, you have a celestial north and a celestial south, just like you have a geographic north and you have a geographic south pole. Also, you have halfway between the two poles, well, we would call this line on the Earth the equator. Well, we have kind of in this particular line, we have the celestial equator, and it goes around the equator of, if the globe around the Earth is the celestial sphere, we call that the celestial equator, and so celestial equator. All right, so that's just a little bit of a review for that. That's the celestial equator. We mentioned any stars that never fall below what we can see. So for instance, Kochab, which is up here, that never rise nor set but simply stay up top, are called circumpolar stars. You can't get more circumpolar than the North Star itself, Polaris, because it just essentially stays in place. But the whole point is a circumpolar star never sets. There are some stars that will come above and below that horizon, what you can see and what you can't see. We talked about the ecliptic and the zodiac. I want to review just quickly constellations. Give an example of them. I mentioned Leo in the past, and so Leo looks something like this. Something like this, and so you'll notice, I need one more star, kind of a connected conglomeration that goes like so. And so this is what we call the constellation of Leo. So this particular one is a constellation. It's the picture. Inside of this is a little asterism, and an asterism is similar. It's a picture inside of a constellation. So constellations are more like puzzle pieces or zones. It's the larger picture. The asterisms are the things that are contained within it. This particular one is the sickle that is contained within the constellation Leo. And so we will talk more about that in the future. But this is kind of my review picture for you. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. As we continue, really we need to look at the first constellation. We're going to be looking at the spring ones first, and these ones are only visible in the spring sky. And I shouldn't say that only visible, but these are the ones that are visible in the spring sky, because Ursa Major is actually visible all year round. Let's look at Ursa Major for a while. First of all, Ursa means bear and Major means big. And so, giving you the notes so you can get them quick, it's the Great Bear constellation. Now notice there is an asterism contained inside of this. That particular asterism is the Big Dipper. Now we know this pretty well. So this is an object that's contained within it. The Big Dipper is an asterism. The Big Dipper helps to guide to other stars and constellations. I'll just tell you from my experience, if I go out with people who don't understand astronomy and I say, oh, there's that, this, and this, I use this Big Dipper method to find almost everything. And so people who don't know what they're looking for, they struggle to find stars and constellations. Well, first of all, a straight line through the pointer stars of the Big Dipper will point to Polaris. And so essentially with your Big Dipper, you've got your 4 stars, something like this. Okay, that makes the Dipper spigot itself. You've got another one that comes over here, and then it kind of arcs over like a handle. This particular set of 2, they will always point straight out to the North Star Polaris. And that's all you have to do with that. Now, again, that's easier said than done, and so I'd like to spend some time helping you see that. First of all, here is Ursa Major. Clearly looks like a bear. As you can clearly see, it's bear-like nature. No, it doesn't at all. You got to remember these are people in ancient times who just were bored, and so they did their best to come up with an image. Now, if you look, you'll notice that the Big Dipper is clearly seen right here. That's the bowl of the Dipper, and then you've kind of got the handle over here. Now, here's my goal. I want, by the end of this particular slide, for you to be able to use the Big Dipper to find all the other ones. So let's start off with the main thing. First of all, if you ever need to find north, the Big Dipper is really easy to find. So it's bright, and you will see all of its stars. And so no major stars of note inside of the Big Dipper, but you'll notice these 2 stars. These are the ones of note to us, the pointer stars, and you can actually go in 2 directions with them. First of all, if you go forward, you will hit exactly at the North Star. You'll notice the North Star is called Polaris. That's true north. You can't get more north than Polaris. And so that's the first step. And by the way, the Dipper will have different orientations at different times of year. Now, I always tell my students, if you were to drill a hole through the bottom of the Dipper, now realize at certain times of the year this is upside down. So if somehow water would drip out of this, it would pour on someone. This is actually Leo's head, and so I would also say this, that the 2 Dippers pour into each other, and then of course it will pour into Leo. And so you'll easily see Leo this way. So I would say make your direction towards pointing upward towards Polaris. By the way, mentioning the Little Dipper, you really will only see Polaris and these 2 stars. It's too dim most of the time to see anything else. So Polaris is the star of note. So pointer stars take us this way. Leo is up here. And so you'll pour onto the sickle asterism here. Sorry if my dog is barking and you hear that. But basically you've got the sickle asterism here. Okay, so you drill the hole onto Leo's head. Now there's more to this, and so you're going to, if you wanted to, you can also take the Big Dipper and you can arc. Okay, see if you continue the handle, you will hit another star. That one's particularly called Arcturus. So I usually say arc to Arcturus. Okay, which is a major star in the constellation Bootes. Notice the O there with the 2 dots above it. So it's not called Boots or Booties. It would be Greek, so that E's sound makes sense. So it's Bootes, and so that's how we say that. Anyway, Arcturus is there, and if you continue that, so you arc to Arcturus and you spike to Spica, and so you've got this special star up here. And so really, just with the Big Dipper itself, this central portion, if you can find that, you can find these other 1, 2, 3, and 4 constellations. Now, also you need to know what they look like. Usually only the brightest stars are visible. Once you find the Big Dipper, no matter what orientation it is, in different times of year, the Big Dipper will be facing different directions. But these stars, for the most part, will be visible to you if you know what you're doing. All right? So what I'd like to do now is to actually clean this up a little bit, and I'd like to try jumping over to Stellarium and just simply finding our way to Louisville. Okay, so here we are in our homestead here, and we find Polaris. Actually, we're not going to cheat here. We're going to make it nighttime. Okay, because if I cheat, you're going to lose the opportunity to learn. So here you are at night. You're looking around the best you can, and you cannot see anything. Okay, you just have stars. Now, I also want to get rid of some of the labels. So I want the ground, get rid of some points, get rid of the labels, get rid of the meteor showers, etc. I don't really mind the planet labels necessarily. You'll notice they do mark some bright stars for you, and if you know your stuff pretty well, you'll have it. Well, of course, if you're going to find the North Star, you probably ought to look to the north. And so, oh, I got rid of my directional labels as well. Okay. Cool. Turned it off, and I'm not sure how I did it. Well, either way, that's fine, because real life doesn't have labels either. So we're going to quickly look up, and we're going to try to find the Big Dipper. And so somewhere over here, there it is. Okay, so it took just a little bit of time, but again, if you're looking up in the night sky, you will find this Big Dipper. Now I'm going to try to bring this software in so I can draw on the screen, but as I bring this in, I want to try to make it clear to you. All right, so if I draw on this, you should be able to see these are the main stars of the Dipper, and so you've got it connected like so, and I told you that it could be used. Now this is a pretty extensive little pen here, so you'll notice that when I put, remember I could go two directions, right? What should be this way? Well, notice the star that's right here. Okay, that particular star is Polaris. Okay, just a bit too big on the mark there, and so I'm going to go ahead and erase the screen, so we'll make this a little bit smaller so that we're not overwhelming the picture. So you're up in the sky, you find this, you know where you are. This is right now, current time. And so again, if you go this way, you'll find Polaris. There it is. It's the bright star in this direction. It's not that far from the Dipper. And because we're using a program, you'll actually see the rest of the stars that make up the Little Dipper. Notice I told you these two stars are going to be the easiest ones to see. Well, this one is Polaris. Okay, and so again, that's the point. And so you actually get an entire Dipper. Remember the orientation, the two should pour into each other. All right, so that's something I promised you would happen. Also, if we drill a hole in the bottom of it, water is going to pour out on someone's head. Well, I'm going to have to clear this a bit. Let's see if I can just go over to the mouse and move things. So it got rid of my ink, but that's okay. If I put this over here, you'll notice the little bitty sickle right here. Okay, it's a little hard to see, but when I put the constellation lines on, maybe it's more obvious at first. And I'll bring back the Epic pen and try to draw with it. Again, you'll get better as you go, but you'll notice that it does in fact hit this particular constellation. And so we've got a star here. We start to draw the lines. By the way, every book is going to be different with the lines a little bit. And by the way, major star in this constellation. And then I mentioned the triangle in the back. Now, some books omit this particular line. Don't worry about that necessarily. Okay, let's see if I can erase this. All right, so whose head did we just drip water on? Your answer should be Leo. And so it looks like I've moved my sky a little bit now that I look at it. And so you'll realize that the Dipper is no longer where I had it before. I've moved the entire sky. Okay, but again, once we've moved everything, it's really not difficult to see. Let's get rid of some of these bars, and they've kind of used this program to help us. So we've got the Big Dipper. Okay, And so here's the Big Dipper. Point this way, you find Polaris. There it is. Okay, you point this way, you hit Leo's head. There it is. By the way, also points at his major star, Regulus. Okay, and of course, there's a little bit more to the story. So let's clean this up and let's zoom out a bit. Okay, let's put this on. Let's hide this. Let's click into here. Click somewhere in space where we don't have any extras. All right, so zooming out just a bit, I promised you would find a couple more things. Okay, so as we bring Stellarium back in, okay, and we bring the pen back in, we bring it to this point, and we start to draw. So notice we've got our Dipper going this way to Polaris. There's Polaris. Going this way to Leo and the main star Regulus. Arc to Arcturus. Okay, and if we continue that, we should be going towards Spica. And again, a little bit harder to see some of those things, but again, this is very helpful. Now, that's all you're going to do. All you have to do is find north. Now, notice I kind of hid some of that stuff from you. The only way you're going to do well at this is to just go outside and try. That's all I can really tell you. And so there's that for now. I'm going to go ahead and hide this, and we're going to jump back into the PowerPoint. And so what I was saying was you can use these to find others. Now, you'll notice that the Virgo goes to Spica. I want to talk about some of these constellations first. First of all, we have Ursa Minor. Ursa Minor is defined as the Little Bear constellation. So it contains the star Polaris, contains the asterism of the Little Dipper. So notice, constellation is the picture, asterism is the object within the picture. The Dipper's bowl is the bear's body and the handle is its tail. So again, this apparently is a bear to them. If you've ever seen a bear, you'll notice the tails don't quite look like that. But the main stars, remember, this is Polaris, and then over here are these Kochab and Percad. These are the two main stars that you'll see when you're looking at the constellation. Again, the Big Dipper, Merrick and Dubby, or Dub, okay, go to Polaris, then you got Percad and Kochab. This is kind of how you find the Little Dipper, always finding north by using the pointer stars of the Dipper. Let's talk about Leo. Leo, of course, is the Lion constellation. It's best seen during the summer. We're coming up on that season very soon, but you'll also see Leo a little bit in the spring. Easiest way to locate Leo is to follow the stars at the back of the Big Dipper. Like I said, drill a hole, and you're going to drill the hole, and it's going to point right to Regulus. The Regulus is the brightest star in Leo. If you think about this particular word, it looks like the word rain, like kings do, and of course Leo's a king. He's the king of the jungle, lions and stuff. Regulus is at the bottom of the sickle asterism, and so the star of the sickles make up Leo's mane and head. Okay, so here's kind of the picture, but you'll see the asterism of the sickle and Regulus being at the bottom. Many times the moon does sit right here inside of the sickle. I've seen that quite a few times myself. All right, and so many pictures depict Leo just like this. Again, the Big Dipper would be up north, up above this. I don't want to say north necessarily, but above this, and so you've got water pouring down on his head, and this is Leo. Now, again, if we point down, it should point straight to Regulus. Regulus is the bright star in Leo. If you go up, you should find the Little Dipper. All right, let's talk about Bootes. Bootes, again, not pronounced boots, is the herdsman. Again, a lot of this, if you read Greek mythology, you'll learn about the stories. A lot of these things, for instance, Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, these are actually characters in the story that were actually, one was cursed by a goddess, Ursa Major, and the Ursa Minor was actually the sun. The sun was actually going to, S-O-N, son. He was going to hunt and he killed the bear, but Zeus saw that he was going to kill his mother, and in mercy decided to spare his son so that he could not kill his mother, and so they both became bears to eternally live in the sky together in perfect harmony. Well, some of these stories, these constellations make perfect sense. They're like the characters of the Greek nursery rhymes, if you can think about that. Like we have Mother Goose in the sky, not actually, but that kind of idea. So they can be seen in the spring and summer sky near Ursa Major. We're talking about Bootes now. A curved line drawn from the end of the Big Dipper's handle goes to Arcturus, one of the 4 brightest stars in the sky. Remember the statement, arc to Arcturus. And so when we draw this picture, you'll notice Arcturus is the main one. I would say Bootes looks more like a kite, kind of a weird kite. That's the best I can say about that. Again, here's the Big Dipper, arc to Arcturus, spike to Spica, and if you continue that same path, you're going to have some bright stars, but Arcturus being one of the brightest ones, Spica down here as well. Virgo is the one that contains Spica. Virgo is the young woman constellation. You'll notice that she is represented as a beautiful maiden with many times folded wings. She supposedly holds a stalk of wheat. Interestingly, the particular star that's contained inside of Virgo is called Spica, which literally means ear of grain. And so if she holds a stalk of wheat, one of her hands contains this grain. And so we spike to Spica. Again, you've got different things here. Virgo's interesting in all the drawings. Here's Arcturus. So we'd be coming down, spike to Spica. In Arcturus, or Virgo many times does not look like a beautiful young woman, but simply looks like a Y. Okay, and everyone's pictures of the constellations, even in textbooks, looks a little bit different. Okay, so here's the full picture. Again, Polaris would go up, drain down on Leo from the Big Dipper, arc to Arcturus, spike to Spica. I believe in our stellarium example, this whole thing was closed in, but spike to Spica there. Okay. Let's talk about Draco. Draco's another one that's incredibly easy to find for you. Draco can be easily found. It's the dragon constellation that's easily found. His tail wrapped around Ursa Minor. Thin body with a diamond-shaped head. So mentioning this, and I'll come back to that, you'll notice that Draco's tail goes right through the middle of the 2 dippers. So you got the Big Dipper points to Polaris. You got the Little Dipper, they pour into each other. You'll find the tail of Draco. And so you'll find his head as kind of this trapezoid over here that we see. Now, it mentions that Draco, and really all of these, are circumpolar. It's easiest to see in the summer. Think dragons breathe fire, so it's hot. And it's highest and easiest to see above the northern horizon. And so that's all we're saying. Okay, just kind of going through here. Let's go to the next one, and that's going to be Lyra. Lyra is actually a harp. If you know anything about ancient history, they used to use a harp called the lyre. L-Y-R-E, and so has only one bright star, and so it really, more than a harp, looks like a diamond ring. Vega is the main star. I like to memorize Vega and Lyra because they have the same amount of letters, and so Lyra, Vega, Regulus, and Leo. You're going to definitely want to know the stars and what they're attached to. So Vega is a brilliant blue star. It's the brightest star, summer star, referred to as the diamond of the sky. Vega was the first star that was ever photographed. And so as we look at this picture, you'll see something like this. It makes kind of like a ring like so. You've got your star right here. All right. You will notice that we have Lyra and the constellation. Cygnus, the swan. Cygnus is the swan. It's one of the brightest summer constellations. The brightest star in it is Deneb, or Deneb. Deneb or Deneb, either one you want to say. Deneb is its brightest star and the tail of the swan and the top of the Northern Cross. Notice in this particular one, you've got the constellation Cygnus and you've got the Northern Cross asterism. So to find Deneb and Vega, extend a line out of the top of the Big Dipper stars in the back of the bowl through Draco. Now the line will pass halfway between Deneb and Vega. So here we go. We've got the Northern Cross. This is supposed to be a beautiful swan, as you can clearly see. This is going to be his head, Alberio, and then Deneb being the tail. Mentioning here, Cygnus, maybe that's a little more clear to you. They kind of add all the drawing there outside. Of course, here's the Northern Cross, Alberio and Deneb. And then, of course, we've got this particular picture. Now, this picture is very important because now we have the Ursa Major. Okay, let me draw this particular picture. So we're going kind of here. I said if you draw a line through the back of the Dipper, so if you go through the front of the Dipper, you find Polaris right about here. You go that way, you'll find Leo. You come this way, you'll be right between the 2 stars of this triangle I was mentioning to you. The one on the left is obviously part of Lyra. It's Vega, and the one over here is Deneb. And so we've kind of found our way to the other skies. So just with the Big Dipper alone, you can find all of these. Continuing, they form what's called the summer triangle. I mentioned it to you earlier. Let me mention it. So the prominent asterism formed by connecting the lines between Deneb, Vega, and the bright white star called Altair, which, by the way, Altair is the main star inside of Aquila the Eagle. I'll mention that in just a second. Altair is the constellation, is in the constellation Aquila the Eagle, which has no other bright stars. And so you'll get a picture something like this. So you have Vega up here. You'll have Deneb, which is the tail of this northern cross. And then you have Aquila the Eagle. Again, not looking like an eagle at all, but you've got three of those that make a triangle, a very prominent formation in the summer, which is why it's called the summer triangle. Also visible in the spring, by the way. Okay, and of course, going back, because the homework would be a little bit different, your proctor will assign the homework based on that, but at this time, I have technically finished, and we will go back to the sky in a moment on the next lesson and talk more about things you can find in the sky. Thank you for your attention, and have a good day.